two subjects left in the discussion of stocks was concerning options and short selling. So concerning options, basically an option is an option to buy or an option to sell. In general, these are permissible, right? There's nothing wrong with it, but we have to understand the very important gambling. What is gambling? Gambling is two things. Gambling, a lot of times we'll say, okay, if it has risk, then it's gambling. No, everything has risk. Even when I go into a business, there is risk that is involved. The risk, I'm sorry. Not only does it have to have risk, and this is definitely part of it, but it also has to produce value. All right, so when I gamble, for example, when I go to a slot machine, is there risk? Yeah, absolutely. What value am I creating with that risk? Am I creating any value? No. I'm only creating more money. Money is a tool. Remember that also. Creating value is investing in a business, helping that business grow. Creating value is helping someone else, right? These are different types of value that we give. In gambling, there is no value that is being produced in that particular transaction. So not only does it has risk, but it also doesn't have any value to it. So when we talk about options is a way to secure my investment, and it can also be a means to speculation. If I am doing it to secure my investment so that it doesn't drop below a certain price, or I take profits when it hits a certain price, these are completely reasonable, because what I'm doing in that situation is I'm protecting my personal investment, and it doesn't, it won't harm the company intentionally. The problem with using options as a speculative tool, I'm not creating value here. I'm not creating value here because I'm betting against the company. I'm betting against the company in that situation. And are there situations where I take advantage before a company fails? Yeah, absolutely. If I understand the movement and the trajectory of some companies they start taking more and more loans on. If we see that trajectory, it's usually a good idea to pull out at that point. But these are different financial tools that everybody kind of needs to be aware of. But in general, options, like I said, whether they be puts, whether they be calls, if they're being used to protect that investment or to grow that investment or to take profits, I don't see a personal issue with that. I don't see a problem with it. The only time it would become an issue if it was purely speculative, meaning that this is something I'm just throwing my money into and I'm taking a chance on it. So we have to be careful, and we have to make sure we're defining how that money is being put in. The second type of tool that can be used in stocks that we didn't discuss were shorts. Now, short selling there are scholars who have spoken about this, and there are three issues that come into play when we talk about short selling. What is short selling? Short selling is basically borrowing a stock. So what you do is I will go to Ahmed and I'll say, Ahmed, I want to borrow this stock from you that is valued at $100. And the reason I borrow it is because I feel that the price or the value of the stock is going to drop to 50. So what happens is when I borrow it, the only thing I'm obligated to do is to return the stock back to him at a later time. I borrow it from him, it drops to 50, then I purchase it. So what did I do? I just made $50. I just made $50 because I didn't actually purchase it in the first place, right? I borrowed it, it dropped, I made $50. Can the opposite happen? Yes. So what happens is now you're down one stock and you lose $50, right? Because it went in the opposite direction that you had. And this is how you have things in the market called short squeezes, where people, because they have to return something, what happens is they end up buying and it artificially inflates the price, or the other thing happens, it'll artificially deflate the price. There are three reasons the scholars mention on why this is not permissible. The first of them is they say this is riba, right? They say this is riba. And why is it riba? Because you can't make money off of a borrowed asset, right? This is the issue here. If you borrow a tool or you borrow my car, you cannot make money off of that unless you have specific permission from the owner. The problem in this is it's not a tangible asset, right? This is not a drill, this is not a car, this is actually money. So this is where it becomes an issue in that some scholars, they've kind of superseded this and saying that, okay, there's not actual riba here, this is actually a type of tawkil, this is actually a type of authority that's involved here, and that's why it's not riba. That's one. Number two, some scholars, they say that you are dealing with something that you actually don't own. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "La tubi' ma laysa indak," yani don't sell that which you do not own. The problem with this position is that milk, it can be understood in different ways. Milk can actually mean ownership, or it can mean possession. You guys see that? So milk can actually mean ownership of something, meaning that I actually own this and I paid for it. Or possession can be is something that's in my hands, and because it's in my hands, I can use it. The third one, which is a really problematic one, is that the scholars say that this is mesa. This is actually gambling. And why? It goes back to that same formula that we had talked about before, that this type of purchase does not produce any value. It is completely risk. It is complete risk. So you usually have three people who are involved, right? You have the owner of the stock, then you have the one who's shorting, and then you have the seller. All of the risk is being put on the one who's doing the option. And how much risk is there? It can be an infinite amount of risk. It can be an infinite amount of risk, because it can either go down, right? And the maximum it can go down is 100. It can go down is the value of that stock. So if a stock is valued at $100, the most it can go down is to zero, right? It can't go lower than zero, right? It can't become a negative value. So the most he can lose there is the most he can gain is 100. And how much is the most he can lose? There's no limit, right? Because the price can just keep going up, and he can just keep losing money. So this is something that doesn't create value, and this is the most problematic. And this is why, regardless if the scholars view it to be riba, or they see it to be selling other than them, or they see it to be gambling, all of them have merit, all of them have value, and this is why the stronger position concerning short selling is that it is a type of transaction that is not permissible, and the law knows best. Are there any other questions? We still have a couple minutes. I'm sorry? Interest? I talked about this maybe like 5 weeks ago. So if you want to go, no, it's recorded. Everything's recorded, so you can always go back to it, inshallah. Yes? I'm sorry? Oh, 401k. 401k is a good one. So a 401k this is basically what happens is any organization, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, hey, the money will come out of your salary, $100, $500, whatever the case might be, and we will give a percentage to match that. Sometimes they'll match the entire amount, sometimes they'll match a portion of it, and they say that we'll invest it on your behalf, and you will not have access to that investment until it matures. Maturity can be age, maturity can be whatever the company decides that to be. Sometimes there are options to take a 401k out early without penalty, sometimes there are options to give it late. So there are a number of issues with 401ks. When does a person give zakah on it, right? This is one. Is it permissible in and of itself if I have one? If I don't have an option with where the money is being invested, do I have a say in that? If I do have an option, how do I take those options, right? So there are about 4 or 5 issues that are involved in 401ks. But like I said, this is just a summary of what a 401k is. There is something similar for nonprofits. It's called I think it's called a 403B. So 401k is for for-profit organizations, and 403B is for nonprofit organizations. But the idea is the same, right? There's a certain amount of money that you invest, like you give money, and then the company you work for gives some of the money, and they go and invest it. Theoretically, it's fine. Like Islamically, there's nothing wrong with that, because whatever the company gives or the institution gives, that is considered a gift. It's a hiba. So whatever they give, that's completely fine. The idea behind it is completely sound, is completely Islamic. How it's actually implemented, this is where we run into a few issues, and this is where we run into a few problems. And inshallah, if we have time next week, I'll talk a little bit more about it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah